Season 2, Episode 13, Hearthswarming Eve. This is actually Episode 11, but if you've seen my previous reviews, you'll know why I'm doing it this way. This focuses on the ponies' equivalent of Christmas. I know it would have been better to do this episode in December, but what can you do? Think of this as Christmas in March. Anyway, the plot of the episode has the main characters heading to Canterlot to perform in a play about the founding of Equestria. This is of course a big honour, but unsurprisingly Fluttershy has issues with stage fright. This is only made worse when Rarity tells her this is the biggest and most important production in Equestria. And despite the pageant being about friendship and harmony, there is a bit of backstage drama. Showbiz, am I right? My biggest question is, did they ever get together to rehearse this? I'll just assume they've all done the play at some point and they know their lines. Anyway, Spike opens the play and tells about a time long before the peaceful rule of Celestia and before ponies discovered the land of Equestria. They did not know harmony and were torn apart. The Pegasi, unicorns, and earth ponies didn't care what happened to each other, only their own welfare. The Pegasi still controlled the weather, but demanded food that could only be grown by the earth ponies in exchange. The unicorns also demanded food, and in exchange, they would change the days to night and back when required. Yes, it used to be a team effort. This created mistrust between them, which reached its boiling point on a day where a great blizzard struck the land and destroyed the little piece they had. The earth ponies were unable to farm. This caused great hunger for the Pegasi and unicorns, the latter of which found their magic useless in battling the storm. The tribes soon blamed each other for their suffering, and the angrier they got, the stronger the storm became. I'm amazed the Pegasi can't stop this, as they are the ones who control the weather. Anyway, this eventually led to a grand summit, where they discussed ways to cope with the blizzard, with each tribe sending their leader. The unicorns sent Princess Platinum, played by Rarity. The Pegasi sent Commander Hurricane, that is a cool name, played by Rainbow Dash. And the Earth ponies sent Chancellor Puddinghead, played by Pinkie Pie. Long story short, negotiations don't go well. The fighting escalates to the point they fight over who gets to leave first. And eventually, they all return home to complain. Commander Hurricane complains to a Pegasi named Private Pansy, well that's mean, played by Fluttershy, who stumbles a lot. Princess Platinum complains to a unicorn called Clover the Clever, played by Twilight. Now that's great casting right there. And Chancellor Puddinghead, after going down the chimney, complains to Smart Cookie, played by Applejack. And to cut a long story short, they decide to all go it alone, and they individually decide to find new land away from each other. After lots of difficult travelling, with each tribe complaining about the other and fighting amongst themselves, they arrived in a paradise no pony had seen before. The Pegasi declare it Pegasopolis, the unicorns declare it Unicornia, and the earth ponies declare it Earth. Pudding tried to declare it Dirtsville, but thankfully she was convinced otherwise. Unfortunately, they then all discover that they are in the same place. Then the fighting starts all over again, with the leaders all wanting to declare war. Thankfully, the advisors vote to calm down. I think the tribes have the wrong ponies leading them. Unfortunately, the leaders don't listen. The fighting continues and the snow appears again. Is it just me, or is there clearly a connection between the two? Point is, this causes the paradise to be lost. Before we continue, there's a funny scene of Spike explaining the loss of the paradise before an angry pony tells him to move on.
Instead of wonderful, it was wintry. Instead of spectacular, it was snowtacular. Instead of...
We get it! Move on!
This really made me grin. The ponies were forced to seek shelter, but the only shelter they could find was a cold cave, which they had to share, and as you can probably guess, the leaders weren't happy about it. And the poor advisors are caught up in the argument and forced to draw lines to mark their territory, and they start fighting over a simple rock. This is a weirdly fascinating history they have. Of course, the arguing causes the storm to get worse to the point that the exit becomes frozen shut. The arguing between the leaders gets so bad that eventually they also freeze over. The advisors are spared, but the frost appears to be closing in on them. It's at this point they see the creatures causing the storm. They're called Wendigos, which are apparently winter spirits that feed off fighting and hatred. The greater the hate, the colder things become. Told you there was a connection? Twilight's character also mentions Starswirl the Bearded, who you'll remember is who she dressed up as for the Halloween episode. Pay attention to that name, it's more important than you realize. Anyway, the advisors realize that the storm is their fault and it was brought about from their fighting. To make matters worse, it's now destroying the new land. The advisors then start talking about how they don't actually hate each other, they more hate their leaders. Can't say I blame them. This causes laughter amongst them, which weakens the Wendigos. This allows Twilight to become possessed by something that defeats them. She doesn't know what it was, only that it came from all three of them and happened due to the power of friendship. I think that explanation is a little vague, but it does help explain why they put so much emphasis on the magic of friendship. The advisors keep the fire of friendship alive through the night by telling stories and singing songs, which eventually causes the ice to melt. This not only melted the leaders out, it also melted the hatred in their hearts, causing them all to become friends. Well, isn't that touching? The three leaders then decide to share the land and live in harmony, leading them to name the land Equestria. The audience cheers, the main six bow, and they finish their performance with a holiday carol. Later backstage, Twilight expresses how she believes they were chosen for this task as Princess Celestia feels they exemplify what good friends are. Unfortunately, they then start to argue about open windows and who is supposed to close them. However, when the storm gets worse, they decide not to take any chances and just close the windows. I don't have much else to say about this episode other than I'm glad we got an episode that gave more explanation to this world's history and why they put so much faith in the magic of friendship. This episode really has Christmas spirit, and I might have to start watching it during Christmas. Thanks for watching, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you at the next review.